Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is going to be my eyeshadow palette review for April. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This video is going to be an overview of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried in April. These are new to me palettes that I've never tried before, and I want to come on here to review them for you guys. I tried 3 because these were expensive palettes that were big with a lot of pans, and if you know anything about this channel, you know that I don't review eyeshadow palettes unless I've tried every single shade. So that's why I want to have fewer palettes in this month so that I would have the space to review them and give them a proper try. So let me get to it, but before we do that, I would like to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about the channel and what you can expect from it. My name is Maaike, I live in the Netherlands, I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup. I have been reviewing makeup for more than a decade, and I love eyeshadow palettes, essence and Catrice, and getting the use out of my makeup. So if that sounds something like you might be interested in, I hope you would like to consider subscribing. So the 3 palettes that I tried in April for the first time is the one I'm wearing today, which is the Wizard palette from Fantasy Cosmetica, the Cold Moon from Ensley, and last but not least, the Behemoth that is the Lens of Enchantment by Ensley. So especially the Ensley palettes are a little bit pricier. So if you were wondering, is Ensley worth the purchase? I hope I can help you answering that question for yourself in today's video. As I mentioned in the intro, I don't like going into reviews without having tried every single shade in the palette. And for the completion of the review, I will be inserting all of the close-ups, the swatches I've done with these palettes, as well as any of the makeup looks I did, because I document all of that throughout the month, so I can insert it into this video so you have an idea of what these shades look like when you apply them with brushes. So in case you're also within the European Union and you were wondering how I got my hands on all of these indie brands from the United States at a fairly reasonable price point, I like to go through a website called MONOLITH. I think they're based in Switzerland or Germany, somewhere around there. And they have a lot of US-based indie brands. They import them to Europe and then they sell it to European customers, which even though you might think that's much more expensive, I feel the markup is only slightly higher than if you were to pay the palette if you were to live in the United States. The downside, of course, with US-based indie brands is if you're in the European Union, that you have to pay for shipping and handling fees, and sometimes that means you have to pay about as much in shipping as you do for the palette, making the palette twice as expensive. And that is why I like MONOLITH, because they do have a pretty high price point, I feel, to get free shipping. But I kind of make a little wish list. I wait for them to release their next update. They always announce this on Instagram. And then if I buy like 2 or 3 palettes in one go, I can very easily get the free shipping. And then I feel it is very much worth it to go through them instead. So that's how I ended up purchasing these. I don't remember the exact prices I paid for the palettes, but I think the Fantasy Cosmetica one is around the €45 mark, and the Cold Moon was around like 70, 75-ish. I'm talking euros here because I'm in the EU. And I think Lens of Enchantment is by far the most expensive one. It's like 90 or 95 euros, which is a lot of money for an indie eyeshadow palette, I think. But we'll get to that in a minute, whether I feel it was worth it or not. The first palette I would like to review for you today is the Fantasy Cosmetica Wizard palette. And I have said this so many times in the past, but I'm going to confirm it again for you, that the Fantasy Cosmetica formula is one of my favorites on the market. Fantasy Cosmetica is easily one of my favorite US-based indie brands because they just do some really cool things. A lot of their palettes are 9 pans. They also do some singles and other things, but I mainly have tried their eyeshadow palettes. They have this gorgeous, like stained glass window kind of inspired packaging now, which I also appreciate. Some of my palettes still have the old packaging they used to do, but this is just so much prettier, let me tell you. And they do 9 pans that have very curated color stories, and every single palette has a range of mattes and shimmers, and their shimmers are always like extra sparkly. They have shifts, they have dimension, but the mattes correspond with it really well, which is why I really appreciate Fantasy Cosmetica in terms of what they do with eyeshadow, but I also love the formula. This is what the Wizard palette looks like. And as you can see, it's like purples, blues, and then some yellows, it seems. The yellows are definitely yellowing, and I am wearing these 4 shades in the look I'm wearing today on my eyes. So that's why I also wanted to kick off this video with this palette. I did another look with the other 5 shades because those are the more bluey purple shades, you could say, and they work really, really well. And I'm not sure if you can see, but this shade here, let's see, what's it called? It is called Graviturgy, I think. And this is a holographic shade. So that means that the sparkle in this is very, very fine and very dimensional without it feeling glittery, which I love. And we could also dub this the review of the holographic shimmer shadows, because also the Ensley Rain palettes have some of these more holochromatic sort of finishes in them, which I do appreciate. The blue is just a straight up shimmering blue, but both the yellow and also this lighter blue both have a flip. The yellow has a greenish tint to it, I feel, and this has a more lavender flip to it. So both of them are really pretty. 5 mattes, 4 shimmers that are really intense, but it goes deep enough and light enough that you can really put them into the inner corner highlighters, and you know, you just have a lot of options here. You get enough depth to do really creative things with, and also in order to use them as liners. So they're pigmented enough that you can draw very fine lines with them, which is what I've done today. I'm wearing the blue matte as a bit of liner on my top lash line. But for the first look, I actually layered some of this deeper purple underneath the purple holochromatic shimmer to create a little bit of depth before laying on the shimmer shade to get the dimension in a slightly different way. Now, none of the makeup looks I'm showing you are going to be super creative because these are new to me palettes. I just want to see how the eyeshadow performs when I use it with a brush. I'm not sort of like trying to do like cut creases and things like that. It doesn't really work with my eye shape as well. Plus, I tend to do my makeup right before I head out to work. In fact, I'm filming this right after I got home from work. So if it's not perfect anymore, if it's a little smudgy, that's why, because this has been on since 8 a.m. this morning. And I only tend to have about 5 minutes to do my makeup in the morning. So, well, eyeshadow, I should say. The full look is around 15 minutes. And like about 5 to 7 minutes of that is eyeshadow. So I don't have a whole lot of time when I'm testing out these palettes to really get super creative. And also because I don't know what these shades will do for me, I rather just like figure it out with very basic placement, just to see how they work, whether the shimmers that I would be inclined to use all over the lid, whether they perform very well all over the lid, and of course also to see what the wear time is like. That is my main aim. It's not like to try and do the most creative eyeshadow. That's not this channel. But yeah, I think this color story is really pretty. I gasped when I saw it being announced because this is right up my street. I love blues and purples. The yellows I was a little bit about, but because they are pastels, they work really well. And because the yellow shimmer has that green flip, I mean, it's the shimmer I'm wearing all over my lids today. And it really doesn't look like a weird yellow gold shade. It's very pretty, it's very ethereal and whimsical looking, and that's what I was hoping that this palette would be, and I definitely think it does, and I just really think it has really, really nice quality that comes together. You do get quite a few very light mattes in here that I think if you have deeper skin may not be perfect for you. Like, if this wasn't this light and we would get a blue that sort of is like more in between this navy matte and this, and then replace it, like replace this with that, I think it would have worked a lot better for a lot of people. But I like this very light vibe. I mean, I have fair skin, so for me it's going to work. But I can see that some people might want more of like a mid-tone matte in here as well. And I feel that's the only thing that's truly missing. However, you could, if you'd like, mix this into this blue and mix this into that purple shade to sort of customize your crease shade if you'd like. So it does give the palette versatility to go from super light to super dark, and I do really appreciate that. I do feel though that this looks a lot more purple in the pan than when it went on when I used the palette. These are more like indigos. It's like a purple leaning blue almost, or a blue leaning purple. It's not quite a blurple, I wouldn't call it that. It's definitely purple enough, but it has a very strong blue undertone. So if you have a warmer undertone, you may not like this, because save for the yellows, this entire thing is a cooler tone color story, but very colorful and a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun playing with it. The look I did the other day with the purpley shades and the holographic, that one didn't last the best. I wore that for a full day and it definitely creased on me, but I feel that this has held up really well. So that could be that the holographic is just a little bit more prone to creasing. That could very well be, but it could also be me and like just not being very mindful of how it was applied. I tend to first use a brush and then go in with my finger to get these kind of shades to full intensity, and this time it has worked out quite well. But then again, yesterday I had a quite long day, so it could have also just been the fact that I didn't check in a mirror until like a good 12 hours after I first applied the eyeshadow, and I didn't really check it in between. So I'm not sure whether it was my error or whether it was truly the palette's fault, but I definitely think that Fantasy Cosmetica has confirmed yet again with this palette my love for them, and that I think it's one of the best eyeshadow quality in the indie realm that you can purchase at the minute. And I hope, like, I'm very curious to see what they will do next. Part of me still wants the two palettes I don't have, just because it's like this Pokemon, gotta catch them all vibe. And then part of me also wants to replace the older palettes I have with the newer packaging, because I just think it's so stunning. I'm not going to do that, but I really enjoyed this palette for sure, and I can't wait to see what the brand will do next. Then this palette I was already asked about, because about a week ago I filmed my eyeshadow palette week for you, and some people were already asking when I did a video about like a roundup of cool tone palettes, where is the Cold Moon? And because I hadn't reviewed it yet, I didn't feel like I could put it in that video. It may also be good to know that I tend to film videos about a week to a week and a half in advance before you ever see them. So that also means that as I'm still testing things out, I cannot like include it straight away, especially with things like Eyeshadow Palette Week, where I have videos going live every single day. It's just, I have to plan this because I do work in education and I have a regular job, so I can't like film something on the fly and like have it be that. So yeah, the Cold Moon by Ensley Rain, here it is. This has a really beautiful picture on the cover. I have been told, however, that these covers are generated with AI rather than an artist making these, which I kind of feel like that's a bit like, I don't know. However, I work in a field that, like, I work in education, as I mentioned, but the field I teach is very sort of like being influenced by AI, and we're definitely exploring like what AI can do and have our students explore that as well. So we are definitely also seeing it as an opportunity rather than something you should avoid completely, you could say. So I do think it looks very pretty, but it would have been even better if, you know, a human had input on this, I think. Oh well. Here we have what the color story looks like. And then something that you might notice, for something that is called the Cold Moon, is it truly cool toned? And that is definitely something that I feel now that I've tried every single shade in the palette. It's 21 colors. And I did 4 different looks with it to be able to test everything out. So I did a look with, this side of the palette, here, this side. And then I did a look with here, and then some shades over here. So I did like 4 or 5 shades at a time, maybe 6 sometimes, to do the different looks. And I definitely heard some people say, like, yeah, some of the flips, especially in the shimmers, pull more warm toned. And while that makes it less cool toned than it might look like at first glance, I do think they are good flips, and they are nice flips. Over here, you get some things that are a little bit more flaky leaning. Then you also get things like here in the middle that are more like that holographic shade. And then over here, you get things that are like more like true actual metallics. So I love how we get a really good mix of different shimmers. Out of the 21 pans we have, out of the 21 pans we do have 11 shimmers, which is close to half, which I like as well. And I just really like the layout of this. Every shimmer has mattes right next to it that it corresponds to. So either this way, or whichever way you go, there is going to be a corresponding matte that the shimmer will go with really nicely. The only shimmer I did not love was this like peachy copper thing with a green flip. I mean, it's pretty, but I have other shades like it, and I find flakies really difficult to work with because I feel that I can't really use them with a brush. So these two shades here, I feel work best if you use a finger, because then the flaky will sort of like burst apart and you can like get the shade there. It looks really stunning once it's on, but it just means that you can be less precise with it. And if you're like me, someone who has less lid space to play with, it can be a challenge to make these look nice. Some of you have also told me this in the comments, and I am going to have to agree with you. These shimmers, especially the more flaky special things that are in here, are more prone to creasing. I double prime my lids no matter what eyeshadow I use. And by double priming, I mean that I use a transparent eyeshadow base. I'm currently using the one from Kiko, the neutral eye base, that I apply at the start of my makeup routine. I then let it sit, do the rest of my makeup, and then when I get back to my eyes, I go in with a MAC paint pot in Painterly, which I set with eyeshadow. So the purpose of that is the first eyeshadow primer makes sure that everything sticks to my lids, and the paint pot is there to add another layer. I prefer it over using a concealer. You could also use a concealer, but I've never found a concealer for me that works, that doesn't crease on me. So I need something that actually works as an eyeshadow primer. And the shade Painterly is very close to my skin tone. So for me, it works like a concealer. So it evens out the canvas and takes away any redness or like veining I might have on my lid space, and really sort of gives me the blank canvas that I need to blend the shadows. But I also feel it works because it does work as an eyeshadow primer as well. I get that extra layer of adherence of the shadow to my lids, and it's another layer of protection as well. So if you've ever experienced staining of your lids after using eyeshadow, go for a double prime. Go for something like a MAC paint pot sort of product to layer underneath it, because that allows you to, I feel then the pigment sort of pulls into that eye primer and it doesn't get to your actual skin. So if that's been an issue you've struggled with. And I like to set it in place because I find that a paint pot by itself doesn't set on me, and because I have very deep set eyes that are slightly hooded, I need all the help I can get, so I need to set it in order to make it work. And I think with some of these, I may have to do a third layer, and I should have put a bit of glitter primer on top, especially these flaky things. Very prone to creasing, but you can make it work if you use a glitter primer for sure. That's like the one exception here. The mattes are really beautiful, very easy to blend, and a really good selection. I do think, however, that for some people, if you love your cool tones, you may want to like disregard like this one you might like, but taking these peaches out will make the palette a lot more cool toned than you might think at first glance, because it does have those peachy tones. But overall, my favorite section of the palette is this half. It's the more cool tone section, it is this more smoky section, and it is a section with the less exciting shades. Those worked really well for me. I love this taupe shimmer that we're getting. I really enjoyed this pinky shade. Very pretty. I also really like this duochrome. I did like the holographic as well. And then maybe some of these like greenish gray tones towards the bottom. Those I liked as well, but it was really like sort of this area of the palette where I felt it was a little bit lacking in terms of longevity, especially for me. So I do really enjoy the color story. I love what we're getting in here. It's definitely something different for me, which I don't say this very often because I have over 250 eyeshadow palettes. I didn't really count them the last time I did a declutter, but I'm pretty sure it's around the 250 to 300 mark. And I've tried, I think, double that amount over the years. So when it comes to like a different formula or a color story that truly gives me something that I feel is more unique that I don't have anywhere else, this palette certainly delivers. It's got different textures that I haven't tried before with that holographic sort of shade inside it. Those flakies, I've tried other flakies before, but I feel again that these are on another level altogether. So if you were to ask me, is this worth the price point? For this one, I'm definitely going to be saying yes. However, I would have preferred this to be like a 9-pan. And then if it were as expensive as the Wizard palette from Fantasy Cosmetica, this could have easily been cut in half. And I would have still liked the palette because there's like half of the palette that's like not my favorite, you could say. So I do feel like I'm really appreciative that I got to try this brand and I had the opportunity to purchase it. I definitely used some AdSense money to good use here, you could say. But yeah, I think that you know, if you like really intense shimmers, if you like super pigmented shades, you might love this palette as much as I do. However, I do understand that the price point that this goes for is something that you might feel a little bit like hesitant about. But I want to talk a little bit more about the price point of these palettes when I've reviewed the other Ensley Rain palette. So let me talk about that one first. And the next Ensley Rain palette is the Lands of Enchantment. And this, like, look at this packaging. It's so absolutely gorgeous. We get that castle in the back. It's like completely fairy inspired again. But again, AI generated, just so you know. This one has a feature that the Cold Moon doesn't have, which is a mirror. Hi. So this does have a mirror in, but this is really, really big. This is 25? Yeah, 25 pans, so 4 more pans than we get in the Cold Moon. And it's square, so it's a completely different setup as well. And what you're essentially getting here is jewel tones going into pastels. And it's blue, greens, and purples, which is why I wanted to try it, because we all know I love a good blue, green, purple. And what I have found the best way to play with this, if you want to get a true mix of shades, is to use the palette as a column. So I did 5 different looks using a column of shades for each of the looks I did, and then you get a really, really nice blend. And personally, shimmer-wise, I like these better than I do in the Cold Moon. The Cold Moon shimmers may be more special. They have definitely more textures in. These are more like your standard duochrome shades, but they are less prone to creasing, which is by far what I prefer. These apply really well with a brush. They're blendable, they're easy to use, and the mattes in here are stunning as well. So a really stunning formula, and I feel you get a decent amount of shimmer. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So again, in a 25 pan, you get 12 shimmers, which is again close to half, which I really think is very, very decent for the type of palette we're getting. And a similar setup here, we pretty much have a shimmer and a matte that corresponds every single time, I feel. There's a couple of really, really beautiful things in here. I really appreciated this shade over here. That was one of my favorites. I really enjoyed this shimmer here. Of course, that purple in the middle speaks my name. And I really enjoy the fact that this green is a little bit more teal leaning. So it's not like not too bright of like a grassy green, which I feel would have not worked in this palette very well. So I feel the color story comes together really, really nicely. Very pretty palette, but it's ginormous. And even though I didn't have any issues playing with these shades whatsoever, and I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous palette, but if you're asking me, is this worth the 90, 95 euros that I paid for it? I'm gonna come back to what I was telling you when I was talking about the Cold Moon. I definitely think that this could have been smaller. If this had been better edited, and it was like a 9 pan or possibly a 12 pan, I would have still gotten options, I feel. But I wouldn't have had to pay this much money for it, because I feel that part of the price point of Ensley Rain palette is in the fact that they're big. They are 25, 21 pans, and that's what you pay for. I saw someone mentioning in a comment before that Ensley Rain, if you compare it to other indie palettes and you look at how many grams of product you get a lot of bang for your buck, which is true, because if you think about it, the Fantasy Cosmetica may only be 45 euros for purchasing the single palette. This one is almost twice as expensive, or it is twice as expensive, but you only get 9 pans. And this has 25, which is almost 3 times as many. And if I look at how much product you get, yeah, then this is roughly, yeah, this is 9 times 1.5 grams. And this is 27.5 grams of shadow. So I feel like you get pretty good, like, bang for your buck with this, because you still get a standard gram of eyeshadow. And in the Cold Moon, this is 21 pans and it has 23.1 grams. So that's again just over a gram. In this one you do get more, because you get 1.5 grams in every single pan. So that's something you find important. But that's definitely where some of the price point comes in. We have a lot of special shimmers. There isn't a lot here that's like a true standard satin or a metallic. These are all super creamy, very intensely pigmented shades. If in every palette you get duochromes, you get flips, you get other things, and that will up the price. Another thing brands have to pay for is customized packaging. That makes them more expensive as well. I'm pretty sure if this came in like the same sort of like black clicky plastic packaging that Coastal Scents palettes used to come in, it would be a lot cheaper. The fact that this one has a mirror, you pay for. The fact that it's a big palette, you pay for. So I definitely think, I know that a lot of people are talking about how expensive these are, and whether it's worth it, that has to be your decision. I cannot take that decision for you. As a makeup reviewer and someone who has a channel that does generate a bit of AdSense money, my aim is to use the AdSense money and put it back into the channel, and that's what I use to buy products like this. So for me, there's a very different decision to take than if you're an average consumer and you're using like harder money from your paycheck. Well, this is also harder money that I'm making. But you know, it's different. I feel that way. It's just a different perspective. And whether you find that worth it needs to be your decision. I cannot look into your bank account and tell you this is going to be worth it with the budget you want to spend. Set a budget for yourself and stick to it. And if you like the look of these and you want to get your hands on them, budget for them. They bring them back all the time. I do think that Ensley Rain does discontinue palettes after a couple of months, but when they release something new and you like the look of it, I definitely think you can try and see if you can make a little budget for yourself, and you can save up for it if that's what you want and make that like your one palette purchase for the next couple of months to come. That's definitely how I went about it. I hadn't bought a single palette for 3 months when I bought these, because the last time I had bought eyeshadow palettes was for Black Friday, so that was the end of November, and I placed the order for these when when MONOLITH did their restock at the end of February. So that was, I didn't buy a single palette in all of December, in all of January, in all of February, because I knew with the amount of stuff that I had brought in for Black Friday, and I wanted to make sure I could get to that I could review those products for you. So it didn't make a lot of sense for me to buy them at another point in time. And then I was lucky, you could say, that MONOLITH also decided to stock the Cold Moon and the Lens of Enchantment and also the Wizard palette, because that was brand new at the time when I also had the budget for it. So I also have to budget for these things. And my philosophy is that if something truly, truly appeals to me, I would rather save up for something and get the thing I want than to get like 5 cheaper things that altogether might cost as much as the more expensive thing I'd like to get, and then still buy the more expensive thing. I've definitely done this in the past with makeup, where I first like tried all the cheaper versions of the chocolate bar before I actually bought the chocolate bar, and then we sort of went from there. So yeah, that's just how I feel. Does that mean you have to run out and get palettes that are this expensive? I don't think so, but I definitely like them. I I felt beautiful wearing these shades, especially with the lens of Enchantment, but also the Cold Moon. I really felt that they had that whimsical, ethereal look to them that I really like. I enjoy the quality, I enjoy the formula, I like that we get special things in them. I would just have preferred to see them more edited down, and then you can chop the price point in half if these were to be like 9 pans or maybe a 12 pan max. This could be like a €50 palette. These things don't need to be this big to deliver the kind of looks that you can do with them, I feel. So they could have been more edited for sure. But yeah, this is the way these palettes exist. I'm not the brand owner. I don't have any control over that. And I'm just not a fan of very, very big palettes. And that's why it also took some time for me to get through them, because just the lens of Enchantment to try every single shade was a look every day of the work week. From Monday to Friday, one look a day, and then I had tried finally every single shade. So as pretty as these are, if you know you don't like big palettes, then don't buy a big palette. If you have a very strict budget for yourself that you'll never buy a product that costs over this much money, then don't buy it. Nobody is making you. However, if you're like me and you're a bit of a magpie and you like pretty things and you like trying different formulas that you may have never tried before, then I do think Ensley Rain is onto something, and they are doing something that nobody else is doing at the minute. So there is definitely that as well. I enjoy the color stories. I will definitely be going back to them, and I definitely think they are beautiful, beautiful eyeshadow palettes. Now that I've tried these two, will I be purchasing more from the brand? Like some of the older things, like the Harvest Moon is kind of like I'm still like eyeing that up, and I also like the look of, what's it called? Groovy Garden, I think. But I definitely think that I want to see what they come out with next. And hopefully it's another one of these very beautiful cool tone palettes. That would be lovely. But yeah, I do really enjoy all three of these. This was a very, very successful month for eyeshadow palette reviews. Stay tuned, because I will be doing another one of these videos at the end of May when I've tried some more new palettes to me. If you want to know what will be featured in that palette, I can recommend you watching 2 different videos that are going to be coming up in the next week or so. I always show you a haul at the start of the month to show you what products I bought in the month previously, so then you can also see what is new in my makeup collection and what I hope to be reviewing for you soon. And if there's anything in that video that you want me to prioritize, you can just leave a comment and I can let you know. And the second video that will go live very shortly is my Shop My Stash. And in my Shop My Stash, you can get an overview of what's in my everyday makeup drawer for the month, and then you will know what it is that I'm actually testing out. So those are some videos that are coming up that I wanted to promote here, because I have I've got a little cycle of videos, you could say, of like, this is what is new in, now I'm going to try it. And then when I've tried it, I come back to you and I give you all of my thoughts, which was the video today. So I hope you'd like to stay tuned for more, and thumbs up this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more by me. I make several videos every single week on this channel, 1 video a week on my second channel, and I do daily vlogs, so you can catch me in one of those spaces, and I hope to see you in my next video. See you then. Bye-bye.